Morgan, investor, creator, rule breaker. You good?
I'm amazing today.
Perfect. Me too.
Good.
Morgan, welcome.
Claire, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We were on your podcast a couple weeks ago.
And now we're on your podcast.
We're just podcasting it up.
Full circle.
Full circle. I invited you today because you have the freshest of perspective around spirituality, venture capitalism, all the things that interest me. It feels like you have developed yourself with the time that you've had on Earth in a way that I haven't seen with a lot of people. So
Thank you.
yeah, I mean, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. When I met you in Honor's backyard, I knew we were going to be friends.
I was actually obsessed with you.
No,
I met you and I was like, oh my gosh, I love her. She's brilliant.
Oh, I mean, I was just honest and real and like a hot mess coming back from a work trip that I needed, some venting from. But yeah, it's so great to have you today. You have overcome a lot to be in a place of so much success. You are working with celebrities, you have a high-powered C-suite job, you are raising money for celebrities in all of their creative endeavors, technology. How did you find Silicon Valley?
That's an interesting question. So I actually found Silicon Valley because I read a book and it was on startups, but it was
Okay.
by a founder who I hadn't heard of before and I haven't heard of since. I just randomly walked into Barnes and Noble and I picked up this book. It had an orange cover. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was by Ryan Blair and he founded a marketing agency.
Okay.
And I just remember reading his story and I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds so interesting. It sounds so much more unique and dynamic than all of the career options I had heard of, because I heard of, obviously like you go get a job, work a 9 to 5, you climb up the corporate ladder, blah, blah, blah. And it was
Right.
like the stories he was telling were, there's a lot of depth in the sense of a lot of risk, like a high risk profile, a lot of urgency, but then there were a lot of highs, like a lot of excitement, a lot of momentum. And I remember just reading it and I was like, okay, I have one life here on earth. I have one opportunity to live every day and live every year and pick what I want to do in each moment. And this seems so much more interesting to me. And so with that, I actually decided I was going to be a serial entrepreneur. I decided this for myself at 18.
Wow.
I made that my mental goal. I was like, I'm going to be a serial entrepreneur. And then from there, it was just kind of like, how do I do that?
So you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur from this book,
Yeah.
really. It feels like you are a driven person
Yeah.
and you're really smart. I mean, the emails I get from you in my Gmail, I have a whole Morgan folder. This is how you need to do your podcast. This is how you need to release it. I was reading this article and thinking about you. What impresses me is that you've done it yourself. What in you made you feel like I'm going to go and reach for it every day? I'm going to go wake up and reach for my success, reach for my happiness,
Yeah.
and not get in my own way.
So it's interesting because my answer to that has changed over time, but my initial thing that I thought of was I wanted to be an outlier and I like being atypical. So I have this whole thing where it's like I read the rules before I break them and I love the gray area. I love to play in the gray area. Yeah.
You read the rules before you break them.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like if there's something that's
Do you
standardized.
purposely break?
Sometimes.
Because I don't read any rules and I'm always breaking them, but there's no reading happening.
I love it. Well, sometimes I do, which is
Okay.
like, for example, I got a visa in the middle of the pandemic when no Americans were allowed to travel. And all of my friends, European and American, were like, there's no way you're going to be able to move to Europe. There's no way that they'll let you on a plane. There's no way you're going to get a visa. And I was like, watch me. And what I did was I read the rules that each country released. And then I found loopholes, like you can travel for business. Okay, like you can do that. Okay. So sometimes I do, just because I tend to be a very intellectual, like, it goes back to the emails, right? Like they're very structured, very formatted. So I think
Even
from
your
that,
texts.
yeah. Well, no, actually, my texts are different. My texts are like 3 words here, 1 word here, emoji here, wall of emojis.
wall of emojis and then walls of essays.
Yeah.
I have to like copy and paste and put
They're like
in
speech
email.
to type. Yeah, I hold up my phone and use speech to type. Yeah, they're so bad.
You're like a 7-year-old.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I am actually. Yeah, with my texts, they're really bad. I'm working on it. But so when it comes to reading the rules, I actually do like to read them because I like to work outside of them. And so that comes back to the inspiration where I was like, okay, if this is what's expected of me, like it's expected of me that I'm going to just be, whatever, then I want to break that in people's minds. And then I would get enjoyment from that.
Right. You're like, yes, I'm so much more.
Well, when I meet people and they expect me to be something, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's so fun."
You get off on that. You
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So you've been successful in raising venture capital money at like the age of
23.
12,
Yeah.
being a black female in Silicon Valley, like
Yeah.
23
That was
is
my
basically
preschool.
12.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. Like, this is big. And you're not a man and you're not white. So, how?
How did I raise venture capital? I think it was initially.
At 23.
Yeah, yeah. Well, preschool days, as we referenced. I think it was initially a high level of conviction in myself and in the moments when things were hard. Because at that point, my company was my life and my career was my life. That's evolved a lot, where now I realize life is so much more than that. And it was a high level of conviction in myself where I was like, I'm doing this and there's no other option. And if somebody tries to get me to consider a different option, it's not going to happen. And if the option to get me to the option doesn't work out, there's another option to get me to the option. Like, it was like literally that level of intensity and focus.
And your investors were feeling that conviction from you, and so they thought, we're going to give you the money because you're going to get it done.
Yeah, yes, and I was just a hustler. So like I reached out. I can't even tell you. So one of my first investors I got through an introduction from somebody I had met once 4 years before, who founded a company. And so what I would do is I would actually create a spreadsheet back when I was like 18. I had a spreadsheet of every single person I ever met and everything that they did, like, where they worked, the industry, the title, what I talked to them about. I still have a spreadsheet. It has so many. It's very long now.
Is it alphabetical?
No, I wish, but no. I mean,
Well,
you
you
just
could
sort it.
You could get it.
Yeah.
the
No, but
spreadsheet
everything's
person
on
help
there.
you.
Yeah, no, everything's
That's
on
like
there.
my husband's dream.
Yeah.
He like does that.
Yeah.
And tells me I should do it, and I look at him like
Brilliant. Yeah.
totally brilliant, but
yeah.
really hard
Is it?
for me.
Yeah. No, but the thing, actually, we should make an app for that.
We should make an app for that.
We should. It should integrate with your iPhone, your contacts, and every time you add a new contact, it just adds it to the spreadsheet.
And it
that'd be brilliant.
organizes.
Yeah.
Because people are your greatest assets. Your relationships are your greatest assets. Your community is a true reflection of you. Who you hang out is a reflection of you.
It is. And that's part of how I got to. So it wasn't that I had a massive network. It was that I was really good at keeping up with every person I met. And the thing I realized is I didn't have to know someone well to ask them for help. And a lot of times people will help you.
Yeah,
I do it all the time.
People want to pay it forward.
Exactly.
Good people want to pay it forward.
Exactly.
It feels good to pay it forward.
Exactly.
And like that's what life's all about.
Exactly.
Yeah. Moving the train.
Exactly. I believe in karma. So I believe everything you do comes back to you. And so I'm the kind of person where if somebody reaches out to me and they want help, if I have the capacity, because sometimes I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't have the time. The majority of the time, I make the time and I like to do it to help.
So what does karma mean to you?
Karma for me is trusting in your path and trusting that everything you do feeds into the greater good, meaning that if you're always showing up in each moment, if somebody asks you for help, you could be, so I love this quote, you could be answering somebody else's dreams or prayers. The universe could be answering them through you. And so that's true for other people. And that's what I believe karma is, meaning if I do something for someone else, I could be answering their dreams and prayers. And then when I go ask somebody for help, they could be answering my dreams and prayers. That's karma.
Right. I love that. We're all connected to one source.
Exactly.
I feel like the feminine spirit has connections to a lot of divine power that men have access to maybe, but they just have to search a little bit further. And I find it interesting that you're in such a male driven industry. However, you speak my language. How do you have both sides? How do you balance both sides? Because, you know, I can't really sit and talk about energy all day with my husband, who is a finance bro, if you will, and works in real estate.
I'm always in my masculine, and I have to remind myself to come back into my feminine because I believe in intuition. Like, I've made so many business decisions based off of my intuition that were spot on correct, and they made no logical sense. And so a lot of times, because I'm very driven and I'm very ambitious and I'm in a very male dominated space where, you know, seriously, I have to, and it's not just me, like we all interrupt each other to speak in meetings sometimes. Like, we don't wait, and then I would sit there and wait, and then nobody would pause for me to say something, so I just had to start interrupting. So that brings me into my masculine, and I have to remind myself.
It's so primitive.
I'm like,
it's like dogs barking.
Yeah, can we say one concept at a time and pause and wait for somebody to respond to that?
They need a big hug.
Yeah, seriously, yeah, they need roses. That's what I heard. Is somebody started.
They need roses?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So I went
roses?
to. Well, yeah, we should. So I went to a sound bath, and it was an all women's moonlit full moon sound bath. And one woman there was saying that she would go hand out roses to men because the majority of men have never received flowers in their lifetime.
You're special.
Yeah, like their inner child, like you're loved, you're appreciated
That's
in
so
these really
sweet.
beautiful ways. And so, you know, to the point of masculine, feminine, I believe The Alchemist is my favorite book. And so I do tend to be a very spiritual person. And I believe in listening to your gut, even if a lot of times it doesn't seem logical. And so for me, when I realize I'm too in my masculine, I just have to take a step back and be like, okay, I need to go meditate, or I need to go hang out with my friends who are like really in their feminine.
Right.
To bring me back into that.
So when does it not feel logical to listen to your intuition? I've never had an illogical intuitive moment.
When it doesn't make, like you're literally saying like, hey, I think we should do this, and it's like, okay, that's random. Like, what's your proof? Or you know,
Okay. Yeah.
Especially in business, like
You're a linear person. You are thought through. For me, I'm kind of spontaneous, and I'm doing 20 things at the same time.
well, but you have to think about how Silicon Valley and venture capital works, and like business in Silicon Valley works. It's numbers in, numbers
Tell me,
out.
I have no idea.
Well, so it's pattern recognition. Like investors look at thousands of decks a month, usually like 20 to 100 decks a day. Every single deck has to be formatted in the same format, 10 slides. It's product, market, solution. Like it's a very, you know, linear process.
Right.
There's no veering out of that.
Wow.
And so because when you're flipping through a deck, you're trying to skim through the information as quickly as you can to recognize outliers, so anomalies, and then you're trying to recognize a story that matches a pattern that you've seen for historical success. So it's literally like the most linear space to be in. So when you come into that space, you're like, oh, but I have an intuitive feeling. People are like, what?
Okay, I see. That makes a lot of sense. You're also creative, you know, and some people say finance people or Silicon Valley people or whatever. They can't, you know, you're either creative or you make money. How have you been able to do both?
You have to understand the creative spaces that make money, or how to, so for me, because I like to be successful and I also like to be creative. And I think there's an issue where a lot of really successful people are very out of touch with things that bring them joy. And a lot of times the things that bring you joy are just things that are fun. And then I think on the other side, a lot of the creative industries and creative spaces don't understand how to monetize that. And so for me, I like to be creative, and I also like to understand like, where are the gaps? How can I turn this into a business? But not just for the purpose of making money. Like, how can I make this something that's sustainable because I can be more creative when I'm not stressed out about finances? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you've cracked the code.
Kind of. You want me to tell you how?
Yeah, of course. That's why we're sitting here.
Yeah. So one thing is like from a business side, look at margins. And so there's a lot of CPG opportunities.
What's a CPG?
Consumer
Break it down.
packaged goods.
Okay.
There's a lot of industries. So look at industries that have high markup.
Like beauty.
Yeah, exactly. Like beauty, there's a really high markup in fashion, especially luxury fashion. So things like that. Like if you look at the story of Amiri, actually it's brilliant the way that Amiri started.
Oh, I saw that on the gram.
Yeah, so brilliant. Right, so brilliant. And when you
Is
look
that
at,
real?
yeah, no, it's real. And when you look at the markup of luxury fashion, you have really high
It's
margins.
preposterous.
Exactly. And so,
Sorry, luxury people.
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I love I love luxury fashion, but it is
So
preposterous.
do I.
It's crazy. I still buy it. So,
So do I.
still buy it. My Saint Laurent boots are probably $5 to make, but that's
You
okay.
think 5 only?
10,
No, a couple hundred. 100? $10.
80.
80.
80. It's suede. Yeah, I mean, what is it? Suede and plastic. Like, you know what I mean? So that's what I mean is look at the industries that have highest margins and are the most resistant. That's the way that you can usually find the industries that have the highest margins. A lot of times they're very resistant to things like recession. So if you do a Google search, industries that are most resistant to recessions, excuse me.
Recession-proof
Yeah,
industries.
exactly. And then look at the industries with the highest margins. You can pull those out and then figure out where creativity falls within those. So, for example, art collection, right? Art collectors tend to fall in a category outside of those who are typically as impacted by a recession. So if you become a really great artist, right? And that's hard because there's kind of this like struggling artist problem. Podcasting is another one. So not for you, but in general, I know a lot of people who make money off of podcasting. That's also a very creative space.
Why
So you
not
can
for me? I
figure
want
out-
to make money on podcasts.
Well, yeah, but that's not your intention. I know, but that's not your intention with starting it,
Right.
right?
Right,
It's
right,
not
right,
to
right,
just to make
right.
money.
It's to uplift.
Exactly. And you can actually make a lot of money. So it's
Right.
figuring out where there's money and where there's art and how you can combine the two.
So do you really think that you can become a good artist and make money and not be a flash in the pan? Because I do not. I grew up in a world of artists, and my mom was an artist and my dad was an art dealer, and my uncle owns a gallery in New York. We have a lot of art going on. My brother-in-law is an art dealer. And I have seen friends who've had a ton of success, and then a couple years later they were selling stuff for 200K and now it's 20K,
Yeah.
if they're lucky. The art world also wasn't what it is now, and there's a lot of charlatans.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of charlatans in every industry, obviously, because people catch on. But I don't think that like you can go and unless you're divinely connected, that art is somehow going to get oversaturated or lost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree because you have to stand out. But I would say that's true for anything. Same with podcasting, right? And so it's like, it's not about you pick one thing and you do it forever.
Right.
You pick something and you evolve. And so if I were to start a journey as an artist, maybe I would go do like some interesting sculpture art, but then I would evolve that and all of a sudden I'm doing, pop-up installations with marble, and then I would evolve that and all of a sudden I'm doing, when crypto is a thing, I would do NFTs.
Because you are privy to the power of the commercial mind and the artist mind. Let
Exactly.
me tell you, most people don't have that. There's one brain or there's another brain.
Yeah.
So you're a unicorn. My mom was no, it's true
Thank you.
though. But you're not an artist in media or whatever, but you are an artist in how you do business. You know?
I would say it's a mindset because again, it goes back to non-linear thinking. And so I would say that in a way, I would also encourage the creative industry. And I'm not a creative, so I don't mean that as an insult to creatives, but I'm saying linear thinking is something we're talking about in business in Silicon Valley. I think that the inverse is also true in the creative space where I would encourage creatives to not think so linearly about their craft because the majority of creatives, if you're creative and you can tap into that, you can do that in so many different forms. And so it's do yourself the service of taking a few hours to look at business. And I would say the inverse of that too is that I have a lot of friends who do that and they lose a lot of money and then they get scared. So like go to events and speak to people who are really successful in business, figure out what the key hits are, the key points are, and figure out how to evolve your craft. Because if you can do that, like, you can unlock a lot of potential.
Do you think the
for the moment.
turbulence that you experienced growing up had something to do with your success?
No, in the sense of the majority of people who grow up in the environment I grew up in never become anything. And yes, in the sense of it made me really self-reliant and it made me very independent and it made me all these things that help. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword where yes, I actually think it's a strength and I know that a lot of people don't come out of that.
And turbulence in that they can't move through the trauma?
It's not even that. It's like, so I never had a stable upbringing, never had a stable home. Like, if I were
Never
to
had a stable
call,
home.
yeah, if I were to call anyone and be like, and I realized this when my mom passed, like, if I got into a car accident and I had to call someone, I wouldn't know who to call. Like, it's that kind
Wow.
of like, it's
Okay.
that level of instability. So for me, I like stability. And I had to realize that, like, again, there's so much more, like, my career, great. There's a level of stability to that. There's so much more. But coming back to this whole concept of success, yeah, I think the internal alignment is really important. That's the point of your podcast. And in terms of what I'm manifesting, I have a couple of brands and projects that have a
Very
very,
exciting.
yeah, very intentional angle. So, giving back to the world or just things that I really think the world needs to hear and see. And for me, with where I'm at in life right now, I don't want to work on anything that's not internally fulfilling. So I really would love for those to take off and do really well. So
So inspiring.
you're inspiring.
You
Thank
are,
you for
babe.
having me
Thank you for
on.
coming and joining us. Wow. You're a brilliant girl.
And you are a brilliant woman as well. And I love to be in the presence of brilliance. So thank you.